when the children grew up and didn't want to come out with us on the holidays, and I just happened to see an old car going down the main road. And my dad said, "Oh, the chap who's got that lives round the corner." One day he came and said, "He's round the corner." So I went round and to see if he wanted to sell it, because I liked it, just like the old car. And I liked something like that. And he put me into it, let me get another. He said he knew a chap in a farm just down the road who had this old car. But it turned out to be, I think, an Austin 16, it's been a wedding car. Anyway, that wasn't suitable. I got it going again, and I give it to the lad because he just passed his driving test. But I've heard about this rally. It was in from Manchester to Blackpool. It was supposed to be a wonderful rally, but it had to be a vintage car. And so I bought another car. I can't remember how it got to our house, but when my friends looked at it, it was a two-seater Morris. And it said, "No, it's no good, it's 1934. So I sold that to some, it was only about £20 or something like that. And I went down to Bournemouth for this chap who said he had a vintage car. And he took me to a small holding with the chickens running it. And he pulled the side of the place up, and there was this little yellow and black little car in there. And that was supposed to be a vintage car. So he said he wanted £60 for it. And I never had, I only had the £30, which I'd sold you the car for. But Jo had money, so she lent me the rest. So we towed this car all the way from Bournemouth with the prop shaft flying about. Jo was in it. No driving licence, but we drove it all the way home from Bournemouth to Liverpool.
When was this from?
This was in 1967, 1968. Things were a lot different in those days. We had to buy a torch to stick on the back rear light for the car, because it got getting dark by the time we got home. And the police weren't so fussy in those days, were they? It was okay. Anyway, we get it into the garage and go to bed, and then we get up next morning and we have to start to have a look at it. And so what I did, I built an extra 16 foot on the end of my garage. I knocked the wall down and built another, during the holidays, built another 16 foot. And so we got this little Austin 7 in there, and we took it to bits. And while I was at work, and Jo would do work part-time, when I got the body off, she scraped it was an aluminium body. She scraped all the paint off it while I was there. And bit by bit, figuring it out, we did all the chassis, put everything. And she made the upholstery, that was rubbish. And we got it going after about, I think it took us, well, yes, it took us till 1972 to get it together, because I had to go to Bewley to find out where the spare wheel went to, because there's no spare wheel with it. So I got it together what we thought it was. And we had
what model was it, Ralph?
It was a 1929 to 30 boat tail two-seater PG 9680. It was a proper model. Like it had lower steering in it, but it was okay. It had a bronze updraft carburettor on it. That sort of thing. Very basic, because it had this Taylor Austin radiator shell on it when I got it, and I had to go and get another shell to make it right. And we painted with I painted that with red paint there with Damel, and I'm terrible. It took me 3 goes to get it right, looking nice enough to go out in it. So, and we went up to the nearest hill to us is Parbold Hill, so we made up to Parbold, and it wouldn't go up Parbold Hill. Its petrol stopped, and that was the first time I realised in your petrol cap there's a little tiny breathing hole, and that's what was stopping it, like it was stopping. So that's the first thing I learned about us. So we got it back, and we got it going as I thought it was all right. And it was the 50th anniversary for the Austin 7, and it was Land's End to John O'Groats run. And as mad as we were, well, Joe loved the car. We both fell in love with these cars, and we made our way down to John O'Groats, a part where, as I told you, that this click, 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 click went on. And we drove all the way down, camped in a grassy wet field, and then 8 o'clock in the morning, had to drive between two bollards and get time to start off to go to John O'Groats. And we drove and drove, seen over the Austin Sevens. We got home, put our wet tent in the thing, had probably only 2 hours sleep or 3 hours at the most, off again. And we went through rain and snow and sleet with pack-a-macs on our knees and everything. It was still click, click, clicking, this engine was. And when we got to John O'Groats, I couldn't have gone any further. But because I'd seen one car coming back and I thought it was going to be last, but we got there and I couldn't go any further, and it was full up the hotel. She said it was full. And I asked them if I could go and sleep in the lounge, but they did find us a room in the end, and it was very nice, bed warmers, even brought a bowl of lovely soup and everything. I remember we were so grateful. And anyway, I don't know how I paid for it, but Joe must have paid for that. I don't know. But we go out the next morning to come home, and there's a fella in his kilt and blowing a gale at John O'Groats and waves us off. And I say, we got home, though the engine was still click, click, clicking. Get home. So we did the Land's End. It was 39 hours, 40 minutes for the Land's End run. But when I took my engine to bits, what had happened, the little screw that holds your gudgeon pin had snapped. Nowadays you put new ones in every time now, but it it used the old ones, and it snapped and it scored one of the bars. But it got home, no bother. So we had that one re-sleeved, and we'd run for years. We've been to Holland a few times. And it was funny that later that year we went camping with the Austin 7 Club up to the Lake Districts, and when we at the first campsite, John Tant had a puncher, so I lent him my puncher outfit, and Hans and Ria Holmes from Holland wanted to go and see Hadrian's Wall, so off we go to Hadrian's Wall, up the M6, which in those days was absolutely empty. And of course, he waves me down, I got a hard shoulder, he's having trouble. So my little 1929 Austin 30 Austin drags him off the motorway to the first service station, and luckily he had the brochure for the spares from Jack Dolby in those days, and he said to me, "Where's my nearest bloody customer?" And he says, "You stay there," he said, and sure enough, an hour or two later, a muggy miner comes in the back, tows us home to a little place called Cumwhitten in the Lake District somewhere. He lived in the old vicarage house. He had the grass cut, so we put our tent in the back garden. He had the outside loo fixed up for us, and then we had a bit to eat. Then shot off the Jack Dolbys and got the spare crank and shells because it was a 3-bearing engine. And we spent 3 days, smashing days there. Joe was looking after the children of the lady because she couldn't manage them properly. Joe had the children looking, and we went to the pub every night and everything, and we had a smashing time. Then actually the main bearing, the third bearing, was the wrong size. I had to scrape it out with a penknife to do get it to fit. But we met up with the others at I think it was Fort William. We met up with the rest of the crowd, and we started doing bed and breakfast. And who should be meet us up there was Paddy and Andy Malone. So we all joined together doing bed and breakfast. In those days, it was only about 2 and 6 for evening meal and bed breakfast. Well, no, not evening meal, but you used to have high tea and things like that. So we had quite a good time. And we went to, funny enough, we stayed in one of these places. We had our afternoon tea, and he said, "Why don't you go down to where was it now? Trossachs Hotel. They have a dance on the whatever night, it might have been a Saturday evening. But we were a bit scruffy, but you'd be all right. It's very informal. When we get to the hotel, there's flunkies on the door with the fancy do's, and we sort of, Joe and I, we just creep into the corner and sit down quietly while the music's going. But once the music starts, because Joe loved to dance, so we got up and started doing the Scottish dances that we knew, and then later we showed them how to do what we used to do. We used to do some of our own dances, but we had a smashing time. It really was wonderful, and say we got home and then went from there. The Dutch couple the next year asked us back to Holland, 1973, but it was joined with the likes of John Barlow and Albert Roberts in the Sunbeam. We took the spares and one thing and another. We went across to Holland, and of course, what happens? Another crankshaft gone. But we had a good time, and we did the Z tour, and we got into pictures into the papers in Holland and everything, and we were well looked after, really well looked after, because the Dutch loved because it was just after the war, and they remembered everything then, and they couldn't do enough for us, sort of thing. So it was a wonderful holiday. That was our first Z tour, and I think Rob Wagermaker must have noticed me or something, because the next one, when he organised the Z tour, he made sure I got into a good hotel to do it. And he's always made sure there's been a holiday in Holland. If I couldn't get him in the club holiday, he made sure I got on it because he was organising it. And so we had to, actually we used to go to Holland twice sometimes, because we'd go to the windmill run, the Z run, and then we used to go to the Dutch Player Austin 7 Club Rally, which is the last week in August. I've had some good times there too. So, cause it was funny, because when I went back to Holland last year, when he let me go back with him, a chap came up to me. He says, "Do you know me?" And says, "I'm not sure. I'm not quite sure." But when I seen him in his car, I stopped him. I said, "I know you are now." He used to be a captain on the Greenpeace boats. No, he used to do all the time. Because he had a funny big engine in his Austin 7, but once I seen him in his car, I knew who he was. So I had a good time. I always get invited back, but I've lost my nerve a bit now, because not having Joe, but like Ian and Chris are with me. So as long as I've got somebody with me now, I'm okay. And as long as I can keep driving the Austin 7, I will be okay. If I can do it in a 100, I will do.